I'm Gilson Nunes, founder and CEO at BrandDX and head of master program in branding at UniEduc. This is Steve Messenger, founder and CEO at RedRoute International, a global marketing effectiveness company based in London. Hey, Steve, good morning, and thank you for being here with us today. Please tell us more about RedRoute and its key marketing solution offered, and also what are your major clients?
Hi, Justin. Yeah, no, great to see you, and great to be here. Yes, as you say, RedRoute is a marketing effectiveness agency, and I founded the agency back in 2007 along with a couple of colleagues who have since retired. My background before that has always very much been in econometrics, and I began in consultancy, looking at the effectiveness of marketing using econometric models in a time when nobody had actually ever heard of econometric model. I then went client side for about half my career, and then moved back to found my own agency when I wanted to sort of specialize again in this area. So we've been running since about 2007, and I think the key strength that we have as RedRoute is that we pull together sort of three areas of expertise. The first is our marketing effectiveness consultants, who are experienced professional marketers. Like yourself, Gilson, they have got a mixture of ex-client and ex-agency side experience, and highly knowledgeable in actually delivering campaigns, not just analyzing their effects. So that's really valuable, because the people that we're working with have joined us on that because they have a passion for actually helping companies maximize the effectiveness of their marketing budgets. So they can, if you like, relate to the client's requirements and needs in a far more effective way than a straightforward analyst might be able to do. So very much the MECs are the key people that we work with in terms of our liaison with clients. But we also have, secondly, all of our data analysts and technicians. They're also very experienced ex-client and ex-agency personnel. They've got skills in mathematics and statistics, economics, econometrics, data science, and of course these days AI as well, which is now very much available. We've been using particularly the Google Bard system, less so ChatGPT, which is a little bit more for creatives, but Google Bard has proved to be extremely useful. So we've been getting some good results with that. And the third area is our technology partners. We work with an American company called Altair, and also with IBM. And Altair is a company that began in the energy industry with analyzing large volumes of data, but they now expand that into customer analytics and a full suite of data mining and AI type software. They're not so well known as some, which is quite handy because it means they're a little bit cheaper. So it's more cost effective for us. But we also work with other companies as well in sort of app development and app deployment, and you'll see some of those on our website. And with other IT companies who are specializing in business information and delivery of business information and IT systems. And finally, of course, market research, which has taken a very big change in terms of the way data is gathered these days. A lot going on there at the moment in terms of automation of data collection and automation of the field work process, which is helping to reduce costs. So that's, we're able to bring all of these three parties together. The work that we do, primarily it's about understanding the returns from marketing budgets, but also, very importantly, we spend a lot of time understanding how marketing is working so that we can improve the returns from those budgets going forward. We have a range of techniques doing that. Our particular USP is our rave model of customer motivations, which you'll, I can talk more about, but and I'll mention it a bit more later on. And we also have our Omega model of advertising effectiveness and pricing techniques and customer targeting and strategic sales forecasting. So those are the sorts of areas we tend to focus on. We do also shopper marketing, which is a specialism of one of our MECs called Simon Smallwood, where he'd spent an awful lot of time working on that over the years for British American Tobacco on an international basis. The sorts of people we work for, we do a lot of work, I think probably by accident, because we called the company RedRoute. We ended up doing a lot of work in the travel sector, which was probably more by accident. So a big client of ours is Heathrow Airport in London. We've also done work in recent years for Kia cars and for Toyota. And we also work for the UK train companies and some UK ferry companies. So we've done quite a lot of work in the travel sector. We do also work in FMCG, or as some people call it, particularly in the States, CPG. And so we've worked with Jose Cuervo and Drambuie and other drinks companies, alcoholic drinks companies, also Lego and Nestle, and a few other well-known brands. We also do online agencies. Or companies. We work with Money Supermarket in the UK and have done a number of projects for them over the years, primarily econometrics. Stayshore Insurance, another online insurance financial company, and a company called Photobox. I don't know if Photobox exists in South America, but they certainly exist across the whole of Europe. And it's whereby you can effectively upload your photos and they will convert them into books and mementos and pictures and things, physical items. Wow. On your behalf. And we also work with agencies, particularly experiential agencies. We do quite a lot of work for them in the UK. Evaluating the effects of experiential marketing type events, which are not otherwise that easily measured. And also we do quite a lot of work for industry bodies as well, the UK Institute of Promotional Marketing and also the British Promotional Merchandise Association, European Sponsorship Association, and there are a few others as well who over the years, and in fact one we've even worked with the Maltese marketing agency. That's a very small market. So anyway, it's a very wide range of things that we do, and therefore it's pretty interesting and pretty exciting. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
That's very interesting. It seems to be very complex, comprehensive, and scientific approach to help decision makers, to guide them where to invest and where not to invest in terms of branding, and it should be very, very challenging, but interesting. Great. In your view, what are the key challenges most brands face today into the near future, in thinking ahead, to grow and increase investment effectiveness, based on your experience?
Yeah, I'd say working with clients on a day-to-day basis, from what I can see, there are really three main challenges if you step back a little and have a look at it. The first is focus. There are so many things to do these days and so many opportunities which there weren't in the past due to new channels, new media, new electronic ways of deploying your brand. The first thing I would say that people have got a problem with is focus, and we need to keep that focus on what are we trying to achieve. We work with Heathrow. They do very much have a very strong strategic plan and a strategic vision that they want everybody in the organization to follow, and you have to work with that. But not everybody has that. You've got to know where your future income is coming from, and what you need to change or what needs to be changed in order to enable you to get there. And that has to come first. And a lot of people are struggling for that because of the fact that there's just so much to do on a day-to-day basis. Once you've got that clarity, then you also have to know how to marshal all the people, the agencies, the technologies, and even the senior management in the company to be able to deliver that common purpose. And we have seen it's a challenge for some people to actually, especially in bigger organizations, because everybody's working in silos, and not all parts of the organization seem to necessarily sort of have the same end objective. So companies like Procter & Gamble are very good at making sure that there is a strong corporate mission that everybody understands and is following, but other companies struggle with that. And the problem just gets bigger the higher up the organization you go. If you're a brand manager looking at one brand in one market, then that's a problem, in itself. But as you go to multiple brands across multiple markets with multiple sets of marketing and business objectives, it becomes a very much a challenge to get that focus. And the only way through it is rigorous focus. You've got to actually make sure that you always know what you're trying to achieve and whether or not what you're about to do is contributing to that or is just adding noise to the system, because when it adds noise, you don't make progress. So focus is a key thing. The second thing I'd say is the complexity and what is often described as the fire hydrant syndrome, of you sort of standing in front of the fire hydrant and getting deluged with this volume of data that you just cannot control. And people do actually feel they're drowning in data and metrics. So what you have to do is really get to know what's really going on. You have to understand true causality. What are the meaningful metrics versus the vanity metrics? Things like Facebook likes and Facebook clicks are all very well, but they're not necessarily going to cut through and actually get you more business. So you need to spend a lot of time understanding what really makes a difference. And it all the figures may look good, especially when sometimes they're presented by the agency to make themselves look good, but only a handful of things actually do really make a difference. And it's important that a marketer actually understands what those are, so that they can pay attention really to the bits that matter and ignore anything that isn't essential. I, in my own view, have had this for an awful long time. I remember it goes all the way back to when I was working at Diageo, and my very first assignment was to actually understand the effectiveness of all of our merchandising and promotions of spend. And the phrase I came up with was just follow the money. It's sort of wherever the money is spent, what's it spent on, how's it being spent, who's spending it, etc., etc. So follow the money is always a good one. The third area I'd say, and it relates a bit to that previous one, is I would describe it as false gods. What do I mean by that? Well, marketing is definitely a mix of art and science, as most people know. So you've got to have the creative side to be able to give you the insight. And yes, okay, AI may be helping simplify or expand perhaps the creative concepts that people are able to use, but you've still got to have that creative element. And the science part is all about the efficiency and effectiveness. But neither one nor the other has dominance, because yes, you can have a very effective campaign, but it might not be lasting. So you can have a sort of short-term spike in sales, but it might not have any long-term benefit. Whereas on the other hand, you might have a very creative campaign, which doesn't boost their sales in the short term, but is actually very memorable and it does help build the brand. And this is all sort of made worse really by the complexity and the sheer volume of data that people have got in front of them, because there are so many different ways of looking at it. Just about anybody now can justify any particular marketing theory they want to think of, because there's some data out there that they can pull together to actually make their case. Right. And the challenge for the marketer is to actually relate it back to their objectives, and to work out which parts of the data that they're looking at actually do make a difference, and which parts they don't. And the key always that I would use in that is predictive certainty. And what I mean by that is, if I take a decision on as a result of this piece of information, will I actually get the result which I anticipate that I will get? There are lots of ways of doing that, but if you've done it correctly, then what you've done is actually understand the mechanisms that change buyer thinking and decision making. Only if you get to that level will you actually be able to take decisions or make decisions in a dynamic market environment and get the result that you want. To give an example, measures that are commonly used, like ad stock or share of voice or share of search, these sorts of things, they are very much correlations between that and sales or behaviors. They're not actually causality. They in themselves are indicators. So, ad stock is how much have I spent, and yes, there's some decay rate, and I apply that to the past spend, and I just sort of therefore have my stock of advertising investment. But the consumer doesn't actually act on that. The consumer does nothing with the stock of advertising investment. What you've got to talk about them is how many adverts have they seen, what do they take out of it in terms of messaging and all that sorts of things. So there's a lot of understanding of the dynamics that you need to actually appreciate in order to be able to make decisions that will make a difference in terms of business performance.
That's quite simply.
Yeah, think of it another way, a very simple way, is that if you've got a rubbish campaign, spending more on it will increase your share of voice, but it's unlikely to actually get you any sales or any business. So, it's not there may be a correlation between share of voice and share of market, but it is only a correlation. It's not necessarily a causality. So those three things really: focus on the one hand, making sure you know what you're trying to achieve, making sure you've got a true picture of what buyers really think and about their real likelihood to buy your brand, and how you can influence that likelihood to buy your brand. And then finally, really knowing the mechanisms that will then change those perceptions and how to leverage them. And recognizing that measures like ad stock, share of voice, share of search, and other things are just outputs or intermediate measures, and they don't actually necessarily mean anything in themselves. So they shouldn't be set as targets. They should be set as indicators, but the target should be to change people's perceptions and to change their willingness to purchase or likelihood to buy. So that I would see as the key things, really. Trying to make all of that work in a very, very complex, rapidly moving in marketplaces is a challenge. Very
good. Thanks, Steve. And it looks like it would be more difficult when we think that lots of brands, they have different geographic or region they covered, and those regions are different. The demand are different. The product, they have different products. They have different media channel and so on. So it might have add a complexity to those analyses. That's great. Very interesting. Steve, the last question I have actually is about what should be the CMOs and branding professionals' agenda to meet those challenges, and what would be your tips and recommendation for young professionals in branding and marketing, to face those challenges?
I think it's three things. The first thing, particularly when you're thinking about setting targets, is to take a step back and just look at the overall landscape. It's exactly as you said, Gilson, about the fact that different markets have different competitors, different media opportunities, different media channels, different audiences. You've got to take a step back and look at the landscape. We did that very much with our colleagues at Photoshop, where we looked across Europe and actually said, what is the competitive state of this brand across Europe? In the UK, it was very strong. In France, it was very strong. In Germany, it was sort of mid-market. In Italy, it was very weak. And we had to appreciate the fact that there were different competitors in these markets that had been there different lengths of time, and therefore the challenges were very much different. So you've got to step away from the everyday to actually make sure you've got that overall view about where you're going and how to get there. And it's not so much the fun bit. The fun bit is all about the execution, making ads, creating content, and all that sort of stuff. And I do appreciate that, but yeah, I think as a person in charge, obviously you have to strike that balance to keep your focus on the objectives. So taking a step back all the time, making sure that you've got that overview is important. The second thing I would suggest is, and we see this a lot these days, is that companies have taken on board and appointed a sort of trusted and independent marketing effectiveness advisor for several reasons. The first is that there is an awful lot of detail to cover, and it's now become a very specialist topic. It's not something you can just do without paying attention to the detail. So you do need somebody who can do that, but you also need that person to be sort of independent and objective. There are lots of teams within your setup, the agency, your e-commerce team, your brand team, and so on, all of whom to some extent will have their own agenda, and the person setting the overall direction and so on. So they can be competing for budget, they can be competing for ideas, and what you need is someone who can sort of be apart from that, who isn't sort of representing any one particular group, and can make sure that the sum of the parts overall is working as best it can to achieve your objectives. And that person, of course, the other sort of area of it that people find it advantageous is that it's that person that then takes the flak when they get cross-examined by the agency or the at Heathrow. I know that have always been sort of different elements of the team. There's the retail team, there's the brand team, there's the e-commerce team, right. And they all have their own view, and we need to be able to make sure that everything's pulled together and heading in the right direction. So having that independent advice is good. It doesn't necessarily have to be totally external. Obviously, if you're a big organization like P&G or Unilever, you've probably got someone at the center who can provide that role for you. If you're a smaller organization, then yes, working with someone from RedRoute or another marketing effectiveness agency is usually a way to do that. And a lot of companies have done that and taken that route. The third thing I would say is to make sure in your own head, if as much as anything else, that you've got the right balance of spend between sales activation and brand building. There was a study done a few years ago, not that many years ago, but a few years ago, sort of 2016 or thereabouts, by Binet and Field in the UK, and they looked at a metadata analysis of different marketing budgets and what people were spending and who was successful and who wasn't. And they came out with the recommendation that you need a balance of about 60% brand building, 40% sales activation on average, to be most successful in the market in the long term, not just in the short term. Now that obviously varies. It does, and they made a note in their book that it would vary depending on the sector you're in. But that perspective that they brought was really needed, because whilst people had appreciated it, and certainly we in our seminars had taught that to people, that you know it's a mixture of the two. What they brought was a sort of recommendation, and I think that's given a good focus. And he also highlighted that there is a difference between selling and marketing. Performance marketing, which it's called performance marketing, but I think that name is a bit misleading, because for me, when you look at it, it's not really marketing at all. It's mostly selling. It's about talking and persuading people who are already in the sales funnel to actually buy from you, as opposed to buy from somebody else. That's very important in driving up your marketing ROI, certainly in the short term. But a lot of what goes on is not really brand building. And I know we had this discussion very extensively with our colleagues at Money Supermarket, where they were wrestling with this fact that their brand building activity, you know, that only had an ROI of around about 1 in the short to medium term, whereas their pay-per-click activity, you know, had an ROI of between 2 and 3. So everybody wanted to spend everything on pay-per-click. But you end up with,
okay, Steve, we are running out of time. Sorry. So
no problem.
Thank you so much for your great perspective from RedRoute and market effectiveness. Just to give your final words, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, the other words that would be about, you know, what can companies do to, or people do to increase their skills and capabilities. And I think the key thing I would say there is to first of all know all about the 4 Ps, and for that you can look at the major business schools and consultancies and journals such as the Harvard Business Review, and also books like Blue Ocean Strategy and so on. For tactics, always be open to information from new marketing agencies. The marketing agencies are really innovative, and it's always worth listening to them and avoiding the not invented here mentality. But lastly also is social networking, and I don't just mean social media, but also public conferences and webinars. Be selective, but because a lot of it will be potentially rubbish. But there will be some good nuggets and some good case studies out there, and you can really learn very quickly from things like LinkedIn and so on.
Thank you so much, Steve. So I hope to catch up with you later on. Okay?
Okay, no, super. No problem.
Very good. Thank you. You have a great day.
And you. Yeah. Cheers then.
Cheers.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.